What is going on, guys and girls? Welcome to the channel. In this video, we are going to answer 20 Scrum Master interview questions and answers that are asked in every interview as a Scrum Master that you will give. So these questions are super critical, so please listen carefully. Before we start, if you are a Scrum Master who is looking to upskill or who is looking to perform his job better, who is having challenges with doing his job, click on the link down below and set up a one-on-one consultation with me. Or if you are someone who is looking for a Scrum Master job, who is looking for resume prep, who is looking for how to apply, who's looking for how to crack the interview, you need help with that process, click on the link down below and set up a one-on-one consultation with me. I have helped tens of 15s of people over their careers to become Scrum Master, transition from other industries into becoming a successful Scrum Master. And I'm the only person that can help you. Click on the link down below and set up a one-on-one consultation with me and make this investment in yourself. With that said, let's get started. The first question that you will get asked, no matter which interview you give in which company, is tell me about yourself. In this question, the interviewer, what they are trying to understand is how does your experience fit the role that they are trying to hire for. They are trying to judge your experience, they are trying to judge your knowledge of words, your knowledge of terminologies, your knowledge of what you have done in the past that can help them in their current role. Now, how you will answer this question is you will try to explain your experience in terms of Agile and Scrum terminologies as much as possible. For example, hey, my name is Chetan. I've been working in this industry for a little over 9 years. I started my journey for XYG company as an intern, and I was helping that company lead transformation from waterfall to Agile. I was helping them because I was the only one who was certified in Agile practices, and I was basically mentoring, coaching the technical team, and mentoring, coaching the management into transforming into Agile from waterfall and showing the value that Agile iterative process brings to the table. From there on, I moved on. Got promoted as a Scrum Master from the intern position, and from there on, I moved on to a safe team where I was managing two teams in a safe environment release train. From there on, I moved on to my current role, where I am managing two teams. And what we are doing is what I do on a daily basis is I facilitate all the Scrum ceremonies from sprint demos, daily stand-ups, sprint retros, backlog refinements, and I work with the product owner to make sure that our backlog is healthy and to make sure that we are achieving all our sprint goals and to make sure that the user stories are properly refined and to remove impediments between the team between the user stories that the team might have on different teams. Work with different Scrum Masters in Scrum of Scrum to manage dependencies between different teams, and that is what I am doing on a daily basis. So now, with this answer, what I just gave about tell me about yourself is I touched so many times on Scrum empirical process, the different ceremonies, on the functioning of a team, on what I do on a daily basis. Now the interviewer, he or she has an understanding of what I do on a daily basis and where I'm coming from. He or she can trust me because he or she knows that I have a lot of experience in this industry, and I know what I'm talking about. So that builds a lot of rapport. The first 3 minutes of an interview determine the course of the interview. If the first 3 minutes of the interview you are able to impress the interviewer, you will do great because that will open the doors and they will be able to trust you more about what you are talking about, because the first 3 minutes you show them that you know what you're talking about with all this terminology and all the strong introduction about yourself. So that's how you will answer this question. Now moving on to the next question. What is definition of done? Explain with an example. The definition of done is when a particular user story has met all the requirements. It has met the acceptance criteria checklist. It has met the coding functionality testing. It has gone through review. The testing team has tested it. It has gone through every the thing that the process entails. And once all of those things are complete and the user story has been stamped done by the product owner, that's when the user story is considered done. That's very important. The product owner is the one who tells when the user story is completed. So when all the acceptance criteria is met, when, let's say for example, Let's say there's a user story. As a customer, I want to be able to log into the screen using my email address and my password, just for an example, random user story. Now, for that particular user story, there will be acceptance criteria. For example, number one, the user must be able to enter their email address, the user must be able to enter their password, the user must be able to click on the login button, the user must be able to access their database as soon as they click on the login button, there must be a forget password logo on the screen, so on and so forth. That's a particular user story. When all those things are getting done, the user is able to type his email, his password, click on forget password, click on login, and access his database. That's when this story will be considered done. So that is the definition of done for this particular user story. When the user is able to do all those things, that's when the story will be done. And when the product owner gives a stamp of approval, that's very important. So that is the definition of done for a user story. Now, moving on to the next question. What is acceptance criteria? Explain with an example. What acceptance criteria is basically a set of checklists that are associated with a particular user story. When those checklists are met, that's when the user story is considered done. For example, let's say there is a user story. As a customer, I want to be able to log in to the web page and access my database by typing in my username, my email, and if I forget my password, I can click on forget password. So that's what I want to do as a customer. That's a user story. As a customer, I want to be able to log in and access my database. The acceptance criteria for that user story will be: number one, is the user is able to type his email address. Number two, the user is able to type his password. Number three, the user is able to click on the forget password button and go to set up new password page. Number four, the user is able to click on the login button and it takes him to his database page, so he's able to access his database. When all those 4 or 5 checklists are met, that's when the story is considered done. So that is the acceptance criteria, the checklist that needs to be checked before the product owner gives it a stamp of approval. That is what is called acceptance criteria. Now, moving on to the next one. Tell me about a time when you failed as a scrum master. Now, this question is very, very interesting because what the interviewer is trying to assess is, um, first of all, they're trying to assess your experience. Second of all, they're trying to assess your confidence in failure. So never ever answer this question by saying, no, I never failed, or I don't remember a time when I failed. That is the worst answer you can give to this question. The best answer to this question would be, yes, there are many instances where I failed as a scrum master, but one particular instance I remember is during COVID times. I had a team member who had left the team, a very senior team person, and we ended up hiring a junior person in the team. And there was so much going on, and I was so busy with everything. I was so involved in making sure the project doesn't go red because we had to match our deadlines and goals, that I could not pay enough attention to the junior team member. I could not help him, mentor him or help him get up to speed with what the team is doing. And what happened was, the junior team member came in and he asked me, hey, I want to learn this React, I want to learn this skill and that skill. Can you help me with upskilling? Can you help me with some way, shape, or form where I can get to the repository and learn this skill or work with a different team member? But since we were so busy, I was not able to pair him up with a different team member to help him learn those skills, and he felt frustrated and he left the team after 2 months. And I think that was the biggest failure for me as a scrum master, because I was so busy with everything that was going on, I couldn't pay attention to the team member. So that is one of the failures that I recall as a scrum master. And that's how you will answer this question. Now, moving on to the next question. How do you deal with challenging team members who are resistant towards the agile process? Now, this question will be asked 100%, no matter which interview you give. No matter you give a product owner, scrum master, agile coach, senior scrum master, business analyst, no matter which interview you give, this question will be asked 100%, whether it will be a challenging team member or a challenging stakeholder. 100%. Without this question, the interview is not complete. This question will be asked 100%, no matter how many interviews you give. So how you will answer this question is that, see, Resistance is very normal. Resistance is very common. People resist and people are, pushing back against ceremonies all the time. In my particular situation, how I handle is that there are two ways I go about it. One way is by being proactive. Before the start of the project, I set up a working agreement with the team members and with the product owner, uh, which already sets the bar high for our conversations going forward. And in that working agreement, I explain to them what expectations they can have from me and what expectations I can have from them. This kind of benchmark will kind of give them an idea going forward what to expect from the process and from me as a scrum master. So that is one way to go about it, which reduces a lot of friction down the road. Now the second way to go about it is, let's say we are being reactive instead of being proactive. Now if we are being reactive in the situation, how I will handle it is, I will be empathetic towards the team member. I will have a one-on-one with the team member and try to understand where they are coming from. Why are they being resistant? What is the reason behind their resistance? So once I have that understanding of where they're coming from, what's the reason behind their resistance, why they don't want to join any Scrum ceremonies. Once I have a better understanding of that, then I will try to explain to them what value the Agile and the Scrum empirical process brings to the table. How is it better? How every ceremony is important and what value that ceremony tries to bring. Daily stand up is for status calls. Backlog refinement is for good backlog health. Sprint planning is for measuring and putting items into the sprint for the next 2 weeks. Every ceremony has a value that it brings to the table, and I will try to explain that, and I will try to explain it in business terms and technical terms as much as possible, because people are value driven. If they don't see the value in something, they will just not do it. And so that is how I will handle it. I will try to explain the value that the process brings to the table. And now moving on to the next question, how do you manage technical debt? So see, technical debt will be there with most of the teams when you join, right? But the thing is that technical debt is very, very important to manage. Some teams have 4 or 5 years of pending technical debt that they have not managed, and that's a dangerous situation. That's a risk. So how I will manage technical debt is that every sprint I will work with the product owner and the technical team to make sure that we are saving at least 10 to 20% of our capacity every sprint to put in technical debt and to manage technical debt instead of putting it off for the next year or next few years, because that is a huge risk. So to reduce this risk, we will have 5 to 10% capacity in every sprint to manage technical debt and reduce it as we go along. That's how I will manage technical debt. Now, the one more question that could be asked here is that, okay, if that is the case, what if the product owner is pushing back that he or she doesn't want to manage technical debt? How will you handle that situation? So in that case, I will try to explain the risk that not managing technical debt smartly can have on the process. If we are not managing technical debt smartly, in the future, it can cost us a lot of money in terms of resources, in terms of capacity, in terms of the website can stop functioning, and then we have to do it that way. So it's a huge risk, and that's what I will try to explain to the product owner and the stakeholders of why it is important to manage technical debt, because later down the line it can cost us a lot of money if we don't do it right now. The next question is, what is a spike or an enabler? A spike or an enabler story is any story that makes a user story possible. So a spike or enabler, for example, let's say, let's take an example that we took before. As a user, I want to be able to log in using my email and my password. That is a user story that is bringing a direct value to the customer. What a spike or enabler will be, I want, as a developer, I want to do more research on how to build up a front page. Just an example. That user story is not giving direct value to the customer, but it is enabling the user story to get done. Because if the developer doesn't know how to build the landing page will not get built. So spike or enabler are enabler stories that enable the user stories to get done. They can be research related spike. It can be It can be multiple things. It can be just analysis related spike or multiple things, but they enable the user story to get done. That's why it's a spike or a enabler story. That is what it is. Now, moving on to the next question: how do you handle spillover user stories? And this came down in the comments. So spillover user stories are basically something you promised in the sprint. Let's say you promised seven user stories to be completed in one particular sprint, and you were only able to complete four, and the rest three of them got migrated over. So there are two ways to go about it. The one most important and most common and the most practical way to go about it is that, in my case, when we have spillover user stories, I sit down with the product owner and I try to understand, and the technical team, and I try to understand the priority of the user stories. Now, the user stories that are spilling over and that are moving to the next sprint, where can they be prioritized in the next sprint, and what can be taken out of the next sprint if we are putting these into the next sprint. So that is how I will handle spillover user stories. Everything has to be going through the process, and we cannot just add them to the next sprint and then we have more spillovers and more spillovers. No, if we are putting something into the next sprint, first of all, I will make sure that whatever capacity, whatever times of velocity, whatever velocity we had in this particular sprint, we are matching that velocity in the next sprint, and only that many story points will be carried over in the next sprint. And if there are more story points, I will take those some stories out and put them into the backlog, the less important ones. And if they are spilling over, I will take the less important ones and put them back into the backlog, because the team only has so much capacity. They only have 40 hours to work. So even if there is spillover in the next sprint and we are adding these spillover stories along with the already user stories that we were working on, how will we be able to do it? Because if the team can only do seven story points or 20 story points per sprint, they can only do 20 story points. There is nothing we can do about it. So that's how I'll handle it. I'll sit down with the product owner, the technical team, and I'll facilitate that meeting, and we will handle the spillover stories, and we will be prioritizing them, and we will be taking something out and putting these into the next sprint. Okay, moving on to the next question. How do you motivate your team to talk more or be more engaged? So there are two ways to go about this. There can be a proactive way, which is setting up a working agreement before the start of the project, where you explain to your team and you set this benchmark that how to conduct themselves in every meeting, or how you would expect them to be in every meeting, or how you would expect them to be during the sprint and whatnot, right? That is a proactive way that will already set the bar high for the conversations with the team members. The second thing that you can do is to motivate your team members is that give them ownership of the ceremonies, give them ownership of the work. One practice I do is that during the daily stand up on Fridays, I don't conduct the daily stand up myself. I will let someone in the team conduct the daily stand up. That is one way. What that will do is that will get them more engaged. That will get them more involved in the process. They will start having fun with it. So that's number one way. And then other thing is that during sprint planning sessions, during backlog refinement sessions, I will, as a Scrum Master, I will encourage my team members to pick their user stories themselves and kind of take ownership of what they will be working on for the next sprint, to kind of get them engaged. Once they pick their own user stories and they choose their own work that they will be working on for the next sprint, it makes them it kind of forces them to be more responsible for the work, and that in turn makes them more engaged, makes them more motivated. The other thing that a third thing that I can do as a Scrum Master to make my team more motivated is have a clear vision for what we are trying to achieve, whether it is in the sprint, whether it is in the project, whether it is in a release, what we are trying to achieve and what value that will bring to the end user as well as to the business. So let's say we are trying to build for example, just a simple user story. Let's say we are trying to build a landing page where a user can come in and they are able to log in. I will try to explain during different during facilitation of different Scrum ceremonies how that will help the user. A user can log in, access his database. That will make a good landing page will make our presentation much more better. A strong landing page with easy to go functionality will make us look much better in the terms of the customer. That will also make the business value go up. So those kind of things you can implement with your team to make them more engaged. Give them ownership of the ceremonies once in a while. Give them ownership of the work they are doing, and have a vision for their team. And also, fourth thing that you can do is, as a scrum master, to make your team more motivated or make your team more engaged, is that velocity. So what I like to do is that I like to, when I'm presenting velocity to the stakeholders, I also like to present velocity to the technical team to show them where we were and where we are so far. Even if we are not doing so great, just to showcase them, hey, this is what we are presenting to the senior stakeholders, and look at our velocity this time and look at our velocity now. We have progressed, we have made progress, so we are doing great. And if we can do more user stories, or if we can do user stories in a better way, we will be able to increase our velocity. For increasing our velocity, we need to work together. We need to have a cross-functional team. We need to work together as a team. That is also a huge motivator, because then they have something to work towards, and that kind of pushes the team forward. So these are some of the ways I keep my team engaged and motivated. Also, retrospectives. During retrospectives, having icebreakers, kind of letting the team play, have fun games and activities with each other. Sometimes we do escape rooms when we meet physically. That is also great to make the team bond together and gel together pretty well. So those are some of the team things that I do to kind of keep my team stronger, make the team stronger with each other, have us understand each other better, and motivate them to for the process. Okay. Now the next question is, what is the difference between definition of ready versus definition of done? Explain with an example. So what a definition of ready is when a particular user story is ready to be pulled up into the sprint from backlog, and the product owner makes that decision. When a particular user story is in the backlog and we are pulling that story into the sprint, that story needs to have a definition of ready. uh, that makes it eligible to be pulled into the sprint, and to be able to, for the team to be able to work on it in the sprint. And how it is different from a definition of done is when the story is completed, when it's completed and done and pushed out, and it's in itself a minimum viable product that has been pushed out to the customer, and the customer can use it, and the business can see the value in it. That's when that's what a definition of done is. So a definition of ready is when something is ready to be worked on. A definition of done is when something is completely done. For example, let's say we have a user story in the backlog that we are going to build a landing page. We are going to build a login page for the customer. When will that so what generally is that definition of ready is when this user story is written in a proper format, when this user story has a clearly defined definition of done, when this user story has a clearly defined checklist of acceptance criteria, when this user story has a completely clearly defined description in on the board, that's when this story will be ready. So in the backlog, it might be unrefined. Oh, we're just going to build a landing page. But then during the refinement session, we will write it in proper format. As a user, I want to be able to enter my username and password and log in to access my database. The acceptance criteria is the user has to be able to put in his password, the user has to be able to put in his username, access the database, da 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 da. That is the acceptance criteria. The definition of done is when all these things are complete, when all the acceptance criteria checklist is completed, when the story has been tested, that's when this story will consider be done, and the product owner will make that call. So you see, so definition of ready, when something is ready to be pulled into the sprint. Definition of done, when it is done and being delivered to the customer. That is the difference between a definition of ready and a definition of done. Now, moving on to the next question, which is how do you handle difficult stakeholders? And this is a very interesting and a very deep question, actually, because me personally, I had a lot of challenges managing upwards. And I read this book, it's called Managing Up. on Amazon. I forget the name of the author, but it's a great book. How to manage, leadership, how to manage your stakeholder, how to manage your different people that you work with, upwards, or the C-level executives. So managing upwards is a very great skill, especially in the corporate environment in the United States, if you or in any country whatsoever. If you are working in a corporate environment or in a company, if you can manage effectively upwards and downwards, that is, you can manage your management. You have a very smart way of dealing with them, and you have a very smart way of dealing with technical team and the people that work with you, your peers. Those are some amazing skills that will set you apart from a lot of people in the marketplace. If you can manage upwards effectively, and that will promise you a lot of growth and a lot of promotions, for the lack of better word, in your career, if you are smart at managing people above you. It's a very unusual skill, and if you have this skill, great. If you don't have this skill, I would suggest work on it. Work on how to manage upwards effectively. There's a book, Managing Up, you can read, or you can just have some certain principles and criterias that that you always adhere to, and make your bosses or people up for above you know, those principles, and show them that you actually stick to it. So how do you handle difficult stakeholders? See, the people who are stakeholders, they are generally business people, or people who are, uh, the they know something, and that's why they say something. When they are being difficult, there is a reason they are being difficult. It Most of the time it's not personal. Most of the time it's something either they don't understand, or something either they are not satisfied with, or something that is not making sense to them. So they are not stupid. Everybody is coming from a place of where they want to give value. They want to have good value delivered to them, and they want to be taken care of, if they are a customer or if they are a stakeholder. So the thing is that it's nothing is personal. We are all working towards a common goal, which is to deliver the product, right? So how we handle difficult stakeholders is, first of all, there are being proactive about it. Before the start of the project, with your stakeholders, you need to have a relationship where you can go back and forth with each other. There has to be that bridge of communication where they trust you and you can trust them. And there is that back and forth communication bridge between you guys, whether it is through personal friendships, or whether it is through just common workplace friendships. But you need to have that bond between with the stakeholders, with the technical teams, with the senior management. You need to have that bond, and that relationship and that understanding as a Scrum Master. And now, once that bond is there, that sets the bar already higher for the conversations. It will reduce a lot of your challenges and your problems down the line. But even after that, the stakeholders are being difficult, and they are being tough, and they want certain things. Then you have to be empathetic towards it. You have to understand where they are coming from. Why are they saying what they are saying? And try to understand what is prompting them to be difficult. You have to understand where they are coming from. And once you understand and be empathetic towards it, and you give them a lesson, then you have to explain. If you understand that they are not right, then you have to explain your point, where you are coming from, and how you are right, and what value you bring to the table. So it is a two-way street. And the most important thing is that nothing is personal. Everybody is working towards delivering business value, and that is the end goal here. And as long as you can understand that, and as long as you have a good relationship with the stakeholders and a good communication bridge, everything will sort itself out. So be proactive about it, build good relationship with your stakeholders, and if even after that they are being difficult, I will be empathetic towards their cause, towards their grievances. Try to understand where they're coming from, and then explain to them where I'm coming from, and have that communication with them. So that is how I will handle difficult stakeholders. Now, moving on to the next question. How do you measure the maturity of a team? Okay, so this is a very interesting question. See, the maturity of a team can be measured by multiple ways. There are agile productive health checks that you can assign to the team. They will answer some questions, and based on that, the test will give them a score, how mature they are in agile practices, and how mature the backlog is, and things like that. Or what you can do is to measure the maturity of a team. You can see how self-organizing they are, how well they work together with each other, how they handle resolve conflict, how are they doing conflict resolution with each other. Is it more of like, okay, is it more of like being done within the team, or is it being escalated to the product owner? Someone has to get involved. How much involvement is required from a scrum master or a product owner to make sure that the team functions and the work gets done? That determines the maturity of a team. If there is a lot of involvement from the scrum master or the product owner, the team is not mature. But if the scrum master and product owner cannot be there, and the team will still function, and they will still work, and they will still have less conflicts, and they will still be able to finish the work on time, that is a very mature team, very self-organizing team. So that is how you determine the maturity of a team. If you as a scrum master can leave tomorrow and your team can still function, that team is very mature. Now, moving on to the next question. What is a healthy product backlog? A healthy product backlog is basically when you have enough items in your product backlog for the next 5 or 6 sprints that have been already been refined, been given story points, and are ready to be just pulled into the sprint and start work on. When you have enough work items for the next 5 sprints or 6 sprints, generally 2 months, that is a very healthy product backlog. And not only do you have enough work items, the work items have been refined, they have been groomed, they have been given story points, they have a proper definition of ready, a proper definition of, they match the definition of ready, they have a proper definition of done, acceptance criteria, description, all those things. When the user story and the backlog has all those things, that's a very healthy backlog. Moving on to the next question. What is the art and science behind Agile? So I was asked this question during one of my interviews, and I have asked this question to many candidates when I'm interviewing them for junior Scrum Master or Project Manager roles. What is the art and science behind Agile? And what the interviewer is trying to assess with this question is they're trying to assess your depth of knowledge about Agile, and they're trying to assess your experience at a very higher level. So the art behind Agile is that it's an iterative process, and it delivers in iterative fashion. And the iterative fashion is supposed to be where the customer satisfaction is on the top and continuous customer feedback is prioritized, collaborative software development is prioritized, and working together with the team is prioritized. And people are more of a focus as compared to work. Team building is more of a focus as compared to work. So that is the art behind Agile, the iterative process. The science behind Agile is that um, and so one more thing for the art, the Scrum empirical process, the Scrum ceremonies, the daily stand-ups, the sprint retros, the sprint demos, the backlog refinement sessions. That is the art behind Agile. They are the ceremonies that make this process possible, that make this iterative process more effective and make the teams better. That is the art behind Agile. The science behind Agile is that the iterative model delivers on particular releases on every 2 weeks in a short cycles, which gives a chance for the team to improve, to look back and see what they can do better. So it forces the team to get better continuously every 2 weeks. Not only that, it gives the team a chance to collect customer feedback and work on that feedback over the next 2 weeks, which promotes highly customer satisfaction. So the art is the process, the Scrum process, the Agile process, the iterative method of delivery. The science is the customer satisfaction, the team building exercise, and the long term vision of building a sustainable team that is very productive. That is the science behind this process. So art and science behind Agile, right? It's a very good question that I was asked. How do you make your team more mature? How I make my team more mature is, there are many ways. Number one way is that starting doing icebreakers during the Scrum ceremonies, during the retrospectives, which builds strong bonds between the team and kind of helps the team understand each other better. extracurricular activities, whether it is through escape houses and different places where the team can come together and kind of work together with each other and understand each other better outside of work. That is one way to build a very cross-functional team. The other way is that I do pair programming exercises. I facilitate pair programming exercises within my team, so that there is no single point of failure. Let's say if there is legacy code that the team is working on, make sure that not only one person knows that code but multiple people know that code, and there is a documentation, proper documentation, so that if that one person leaves who knows that code, the other people can handle the code because they have proper documentation, they understand the code better, they have been working with the team in pair programming exercises, so they can handle that legacy code. So having pair programming exercises so that we don't have single point of failure, building cross-functional teams where multiple skills, where vertical slicing of stories can happen. Let's say a senior developer can work as a senior developer, can work as a tester, can work as a product owner if time comes. So having that vertical slice of user stories where multiple skills can do multiple jobs, where the team can do, one person in the team can do almost everything. That is also very important. The other thing is that self-organizing teams. When you are doing sprint planning, when you are doing product backlog refinement, make sure the team picks out their own user stories by themselves. Don't have to depend on you or the product owner to assign to them the user stories. They are able to do it themselves. That is also what makes a team mature. The other thing is that doing agile health checks. How familiar is the team with the agile terminology, with backlog health, with different types of things in agile. The other thing that you can do to make your team more mature is that so having a cross-functional team, doing pair programming exercises, having no single point of failure, building self-organizing team that can pick out their own user stories, having a strong bond between team members where they understand each other really well, where they bond together really well, so they have more sustainability, less turnover. The other thing is conflict resolution. How does the team handle conflict? So basically, let's say if there's a conflict between a senior person and a junior person, they have to be able to they have to know each other so well, they have to be able to bond each other together so well that the scrum master is not needed to resolve the conflict. They can resolve their conflict on their own by coming together, by talking to each other, by understanding that we are working towards a common goal, and if we work together we can achieve that goal faster. That's how you make your team more mature. Giving them those tools, giving them those skills to do better conflict resolution, giving them the vision that we are working towards a common goal. And at the end of the day, the goal is to make a better self-organizing team and give as much value to the business as possible in the shortest amount of time and build a great product. So if the team understands that really well, they understand the vision, they understand what they are working on, they understand each other really well, there is no lack of skills, everybody knows all the skills, there is no single point of failure where if something goes wrong, they are looking at one person to make the decision, and the decision making is spread out across multiple team members. That's how you make your team more mature and more self-organizing. Those are the things that you can do in your team to make it more mature. Now, what are cross-functional teams and how to build one? So what a cross-functional team is basically, as I said in the previous answer as well, so vertical slicing of user stories. Let's say there is a developer. Not only he has to be a developer, he can do testing, he can do multiple skills within the team, he can do design, he can do multiple skills within the team, and that happens through pair programming, and that happens through working together and those kind of exercises. That is a cross-functional team. If one person leaves a team, the other people can do his job and can handle the team if that ends up happening. So vertical slicing of user stories is what you know it means. So cross-functional teams where multiple team members can perform multiple skills and there is no single point of failure, and you do that through pair programming. You do that through cross-functional team building exercises like icebreakers during the retrospective, or puzzle solving, or escape rooms and things like that. That's how you build cross-functional teams. What are the different Scrum artifacts? Scrum artifacts, according to Scrum Alliance, and when you take Scrum Master certification, you will know this. The Scrum artifacts are three things. It is a product backlog, it is a sprint backlog, and it is a potentially releasable product increment. That's according to Sprint Alliance. So what is a product backlog? A product backlog is basically requirements that have been collected from the business and that have been compiled in a document way, in a document format, and those things are called a product backlog. Now, what is a sprint backlog? A sprint backlog is when that product backlog has been refined and that has been put into buckets of sprints. This is for sprint 3, sprint 4, sprint 5. That is what is called a sprint backlog. It has been given story points, it has been given it has been broken down into user story format, it has been broken down into minimum viable product format, it has a proper definition of done, it has a proper acceptance criteria attached to it. That is what is called a sprint backlog. The third thing is that product increment or minimum viable product delivery. So when a user story brings a certain value to the customer and it can be delivered on by itself without depending on any other user story or any other thing, that's when a user story is called a minimum viable product. And delivery of that user story is a Scrum artifact. It's a release of a minimum viable product is a Scrum artifact. So as per Scrum Alliance, these are the three main Scrum artifacts. Number one, product backlog. Number two, sprint backlog. And number three is the minimum viable product delivery. Okay. Now moving on to the next question, which is how did you learn? What did you learn from your last retrospective? So in this on this question, you can answer that. Yeah, in our last retrospective, we discovered that in most of the story, when we were assigning story points, there was a lot of vagueness. One person was saying this story is 7 story points, the other person was saying this story is 3 story points. There was a lot of vagueness, and we didn't have a lot of time to discuss those vaguenesses. Why is there so much difference while assigning story points? So what we discovered that our backlog refinement process is only 1 hour, and we need a backlog refinement process which is at least 2 hours so that we can discuss those differences. The other thing that we discovered is that we need to have a proper definition of done and a proper clarity around every user story which comes from the product owner, that lets the team know that that lets the team know that this is what needs to be done with this story, and these many story points are okay for it. Right now we are having so much difference while estimating story points because there is no proper definition of done or a proper acceptance criteria which affects our velocity. So to improve our velocity, we decided during the last retrospective that we will have a proper definition of done, a proper acceptance criteria with every user story, and we will assign it proper story points. We will increase the length of our backlog refinement session so that we can do proper refinement with every user story, and there is no vagueness around the user story, so that when someone is working on this user story, they are not guessing what needs to be done, what is this, what is that. They are just able to go in, they understand it really well, and they are just able to start working on it, which improves our velocity. That is what we learned from our last retrospective. You can also say that during our last retrospective we discovered that we have a lot of dependency on a third team, and the team Scrum Master is not very responsive, and which is delaying our progress, which is delaying our sprint goal. And so we discussed that me as a Scrum Master, I will raise this question in Scrum of Scrums, and I will raise this question to our senior Scrum Masters and kind of ask them what's the best process here to kind of move ahead with this, where that Scrum Master from the third team can work with me a little bit better. And they suggested that have a one-on-one with him, work together with him, and build a bond with him, and try to understand where he's coming from, so that this kind of situation doesn't arise. Those are two examples you can give in your retrospective, and you can make your own based on your team, based on your role, whatever you feel is better. But that's what you can say that, hey, our velocity was declining, we were trying to improve our velocity, and we discovered that if we have a proper definition of done, a proper acceptance criteria with our user stories, that will improve our velocity by a lot, because that will reduce the vagueness that is associated with every user story. So we decided to have a proper definition of done, a proper acceptance criteria with every user story, and that will give us more velocity. Next question is, what are the different Scrum metrics? Scrum metrics can be very subjective to each individual team, but some of the most common Scrum metrics are velocity, sprint burn down chart, release burn down chart, bug defect, These are some of the most common Scrum metrics. And lead time, how much time is it taking to do one release? So let's talk about velocity. Velocity is a Scrum metric that measures the story points that are completed every sprint, and it puts story points from every sprint on a chart. Once to one sprint one was 7 story points completed. Sprint two was 12 story points completed. Sprint three is 15 story points completed, so on and so forth. So velocity tracks the number of story points that have been completed every sprint. That is one metric. The second metric is sprint burn down chart. It's basically a chart that goes down as the completion of the sprint progresses. So let's say we have 6 user stories that we are going to be completed in this sprint. That 6 user stories will be the start of the sprint burn down chart, and as we complete the user stories, the chart will go in a linear format downwards from 6 to 4, 4 to 3, 3 to 1, and so on and so forth. That's a sprint burn down chart. The other metric is a release burndown chart. Just the way sprint burndown chart tracks user stories, same way, also sprint burndown chart can also track story points, by the way. Same way, a release burndown chart will track the features or the epics that have been completed. In my case, it's epics. So all the epics that we are completing towards the completion of the feature, those epics will, let's say we are planning to complete 6 epics to complete one feature. So those epics will be denoted on a release burn down chart, and as we complete those epics, the line of the chart ideally has to be going down towards 0, from 6 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1, and so on and so forth, right? And if it's not going to 0, if it's not ideal, if it's stagnating out, or if it's going upwards, then something is not right, and we need to discuss what is going on. Those are the three most important metrics. Then there can be a fourth metric, which is bug defect, which is generally used by the testing team. How many bugs are showing up in the code that we are delivering, or in the product that in the MVP that we are delivering to the customer? What is the percentage of those bugs? That is called a bug defect. Now if the percentage is quite high and we are not able to resolve it, we are not able to bring the percentage down, something is not right, and that needs to be discussed. And as a scrum master, you need to have facilitate those conversations, why the bug defect ratio is so high. So those are the four different metrics that are used, but they are very subjective. Every team can have their own metrics, and lead time is also one that is used. A lead time is basically how much time it takes for every release, and it tracks that time just like on a chart, just like you track velocity. Some teams even use cycle time. So those are the different Scrum metrics that are used, but the most common are velocity, sprint burn down, release burn down, bug defect. Okay, moving on to the next question. What is a user story? A user story is a minimum viable product. A user story is a piece of work that is written in Gherkin format that delivers a direct value to the customer. Our user story is very small enough that it can be worked on independently without any dependence on any other user stories. Our user story is small, it delivers a direct value to the customer, is written in Gherkin format, and can be worked on independently. It is a minimum viable product in itself. That is what a user story is. A user story has a proper definition of done, a proper acceptance criteria that denotes when the user story will be completed. What things need to happen to have this user story be working and completing properly. That is what a user story is. A minimum viable product that delivers a value to the customer. Who writes a user story? Product owner, along with the technical team. And you as a Scrum Master, you facilitate that conversation. How to write a proper user story? A proper user story has to have the customer in focus. Let's say I want to build a landing page where the customer can come in, they can type in their username and password and log in and access their database. How I will write this user story is, as a customer, I want to be able to enter my username and password and access my database. That is how you write it's written in a Gherkin format, and it talks in the terms of customer value. It has a proper acceptance criteria. It has a proper definition of done attached to it. For example, when when the customer is able to enter his username and password and is able to log in and access his database, that's when this user story will be considered done. When the testing has been done, that's when this user story will be considered done. When the code review has been done, that's when this user story will be considered done. When the product owner has given his approval, that's when this user story will be considered done. That's the acceptance criteria and the definition of done. So how to write a proper user story? Write it in where the customer is in focus. The customer, the user is in focus, and write it in a way where it talks about the value that is being given to the customer, the value that is being given to the user who is going to be using that user story, who's going to be using that particular minimum viable product. And it has to have a proper acceptance criteria and a definition of done attached to it. That is how you write a proper user story. Okay, what are story points? Story points are basically a relative size of estimation, relative way of estimation of stories. Let's say I have a story, and I am I'm using hours to measure the story. When I'm using hours to measure the size of a story or measure the size of the work, it's not relative. It's very variable. Hours can vary from developer to developer. One developer can complete a user story in 6 hours, then the other can complete it in 10 hours. Hours do not denote the complexity, the risk that might pop up, the dependencies that might pop up while completion of the user story. So hours are very subjective and very variable, while a story point is very relative. It's relative because it compares to the previous completion of the previous story. Let's say one story point, the team took 2 hours and it had two story points assigned to it. If that story is two story points, based on that estimation, how longer will this story take, what capacity will it take, and based on that estimation, what number will you give this story point? That is relative estimation. There is a wall of reference. A wall of reference is basically a user story that has been estimated in the past by the team, that has been given a certain number of story points in the past by the team, and based on that estimation we are going to estimate current story. So it's a relative way of estimating stories, uh, and it is very subjective to each team. Every team has their own numbers while giving story points. One team can have a different way of assigning story points, the other team can have a different way of assigning story points. So it's very team focused, it's very relative, and it's a very relative way of estimation of the minimum viable product. It factors in the complexity, the experience of the developer, the risk, the dependencies, and it kind of the story point estimation exercise will help you sit together with the team and kind of help you have those conversations where, okay, this story is 3 story points because this, and the other person will say, no, this story is 5 story points because of this. So it will help bring those points up where there are dependencies being brought up, where there are risks being brought up that might be associated with the user story. So it helps facilitate those conversion, the story point exercise, and it's a very effective way to bring those things up, to reduce vagueness in the user story, and to increase the velocity of the team, and to kind of build a better product. So story point is a very great and relative way of estimating work in story points. Now, moving on to the next question. Why are story points better than hours? Story points are better than hours because hours are not relative. When I'm assigning, let's say I'm a developer, I have a user story that I have to assign hours to. I can just assign it hours based on my own understanding. The other person says, hey, it's 6 hours. I say, no, it's not 6 hours, it's 9 hours. Because it will take me 9 hours because I don't have that much experience, or because I have experience, I'm just lazy. I don't want to do it. I don't want to waste my. I want to waste my time, and I don't want to do it in 6 hours. I want to do it in 9 hours. What's there to stop me, right? That estimation in hours. That's estimation in hours for you. Now with story points, there is relative estimation. There is a wall of reference. Last time we did a similar user story and we assigned it 2 story points, and everybody will come to the table and they will say, yeah, this one is also 2 story points, or this one is also 5 story points. And then let's say one person says, let's say I say, okay, I think this is 5 story points. Other person say it is 2 story points. Why? Why is it 2 story points? Why is it 5 story points? Why am I saying it's 5 story points? Now I have to come up with my discussion. Oh, this can have a dependency on that key. Oh, this can have that risk. This can have that and that. And then the other people in the other team will counter me. Oh, if it can have that dependency, do it this way, this way, this way. So those conversations are happening. Plus, there is a relative estimation from a different story that was assigned the similar story points in the last week. So there is no vagueness. Nobody can cheat. I cannot say I'm doing it in 9 hours and then 6 hours I do it, 3 hours I'm sleeping. So that cannot happen because there is a relative size of estimation that has already happened before, and the other people are involved in assigning story points. The T people in the other T people in the team that are like uh, that are senior developers, they are working together to assign story points. So it reduces complexity, it counts in the risk, the dependencies, complexity, hours, everything, skill of the developer, everything in consideration when assigning story points, and it's relative to the reference point that we did last week. Based on that reference point, how many story points do you think this story is? While hours, they are very subjective, very variable, they can depend on person to person, and there is a lot of vagueness in those. The next question is how to measure sprint velocity. The most common way of measuring sprint velocity is through story points. How many story points have been completed in a particular sprint? That's how you measure sprint velocity. Let's say in one particular sprint we are completing 7 story points, and in the other particular sprint we are completing 6 story points. That is the sprint velocity. How many, whatever the amount of story points that are being completed in a particular sprint, that is the sprint velocity. Moving on to the next question. What is a sprint burn down chart? What a sprint burn down chart is basically, it is the amount of work that is being completed in a particular sprint that has been put up on a chart, and that goes in a linear fashion downwards. Say for this week we have promised to complete 10 story points for this particular sprint. Now, as the week goes on and as the story points are getting completed and the stories are getting completed, the sprint burn down chart will denote that progress in a downward fashion. So from 10 story, we promised 10 story points, from 10 to 6, 6 to 5, 5 to 4, 4 to 3, and it will be denoted on the chart. That is what a sprint burn down chart is. And in Jira, you can create a dashboard where the sprint burn down chart will automatically be composed by Jira if you're using Jira, and we will show that in a tutorial video down the line. That is what a sprint burn down chart is. The next question is, what is the difference between waterfall and agile, and which one is better? Now, this is a very interesting question because, so first of all, let's discuss what the waterfall model is, right? So what happens in a waterfall model is that there is no iterative fashion. Me as a customer, I come to your development team and I say, hey, I want you to deliver me this product. I want you to build me this website. This is the budget. This is the money. I'll come back to you after 1 year. Get it done. You, as a developer, you will take those requirements and you will have those requirements documented, and you will start working on it. And you have the budget already, and you will take 1 year and you will get it completed. Now, that is a waterfall model in a gist. There is no going back and forth with the customer. If you make a mistake, you do not adhere to what he wanted, what the customer wanted. There is no way to tell, right? Only at the end of the project will you know. If the budget exceeds, let's say I promised you $1 million for the completion of the project, but the budget exceeds $2 million. Okay, I don't know why it happened. I don't know how it happened, right? There is no back and forth with the customer. The customer doesn't know why it happened, how it happened. Only when the project is about to be completed or when the project completion date is close, then you will sit down with the customer and tell them, hey, this is what happened. So you see, it's a time-bound project. It's a time-bound project. There is no customer satisfaction in focus. There is no iterative improvement, the team improvement, or anything like that in focus. It's just that, okay, we'll build it 1 year. You come back, you take the product. Okay, right? That is waterfall. Um, what is agile is basically, it's iterative form of development that focuses on collaboration, team building, customer satisfaction, maximum value to the customer, and continuous customer feedback. What I mean by that is, instead of taking 1 year to complete the project and the customer only shows up after 1 year, what we do in Agile is we will do it every 2 weeks. We will deliver you a minimum viable product every 2 weeks, and we will show it to you every 2 weeks, and we'll sit down with you with the customer every 2 weeks and take their feedback about the minimum viable product. If there are any changes they want to make, we will make them every 2 weeks. And not only that, we are doing it in an iterative fashion, and we are sitting down with the team at the end of the 2 weeks, and we are asking the team also, hey, what do you think we could have done better? What do you think we can improve on? What do you think we didn't do so well? What do you think we did great? So not only are we reflecting on what we are delivering to the customer to get better customer satisfaction, also we are reflecting on the team. How can we build a better team to ensure team sustainability? That people are happy to work together with each other. When they're happy to work together with each other, they will build a better product. So those are some of the things that are very important and critical to Agile collaboration. So all the things in Agile manifesto. That is what is the difference between waterfall and Agile. Now, which one is better? That's a very subjective question, and it's a subjective question because it really depends on the organization and the team. Some companies might not have the budget to implement Agile. They might only have the budget to do waterfall. Some companies might have a hybrid model where they're doing both waterfall and agile in some way, shape, or form. So it really depends on the team and the organization, right? Which one is better? It really depends on the team. But if we look at the larger picture, if we look at customer satisfaction, team building, and all these metrics, right? Better product development, all these metrics, then agile is definitely the better version of development as compared to waterfall, because as we mentioned, it's an iterative model. It focuses on customer satisfaction and team building and better product development, and there is continuous refinement, there is continuous retrospective, there is continuous looking back at how we can do better. So there is a lot of improvement that goes on in the process. So it's a very mature, very better process to do things as compared to waterfall. That is it for this video, guys. These were the 25 questions that get asked in Scrum Master interviews, in my experience that I have seen. And these are the answers that we have given to these 25 questions. If you are someone who's looking for a Scrum Master job, please don't forget to click on the link down below and set up a one-on-one consultation with me where I can help you, whether it is with resume prep, job search, or if you are working as a Scrum Master, I can help you do your job better at your current role. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.